It's a Tuesday afternoon in October 2023. Outside Nobu Restaurant on Malibu's Carbon Beach, one of the most photographed strips of coastline in the world, a small crowd has gathered near the valet parking area. Nobody planned to be here for anything special. They came for the ocean view, the sushi, the chance of a celebrity sighting. What they got instead would end up on every phone, every platform, every sports talk show from London to Las Vegas. A man is laughing, loudly, too loudly for a public place. He is tall and wide in the shoulders, with the kind of neck that comes from years of wrestling mats and iron bars. His name is Dario Vasquez, 28 years old, a rising UFC prospect from Fresno, California, ranked 14th in the lightweight division. He has 180,000 Instagram followers. He has a sponsorship deal with a protein shake company. He has a face that has been punched many times and seems proud of every scar. He is pointing at a man walking to his car. A man who, in real life, not movie life, holds a legitimate black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, trained under some of the most respected combat coaches on earth, and spent 12 years as a competitive diver before becoming one of the most recognizable action stars on the planet. Jason Statham is 56 years old on this day. He is wearing a plain gray t-shirt and carrying a small paper bag. He is not performing. He is just a man walking to his car. And Dario Vasquez, with his phone already recording, opens his mouth. What happens next takes 30 seconds. But to understand why those 30 seconds land the way they do, why they cut through the noise and stay, you have to go back 15 years. Back to a neighborhood in Fresno's Southwest District. Back to a small house on Church Avenue. Back to a Wednesday morning when a 9-year-old boy walked to his father's closet and found it empty. Because the man laughing outside Nobu wasn't born loud. He was made that way. To understand what Dario Vasquez does outside Nobu, you have to go back 15 years. Back to a neighborhood in Fresno's Southwest District. A zip code where the parks have broken basketball rims and the corner stores have bulletproof glass at the register. Dario grew up in a small house on Church Avenue, the third of 5 children. His mother, Rosa, worked double shifts at a laundry facility on Blackstone Avenue. His father, Miguel, left when Dario was 9. No goodbye note. Just an empty closet on a Wednesday morning. Dario never cried about it, not once, not in front of anyone. What he did instead was fight. First with words, then with fists. In schoolyards, in parking lots, in the kinds of places where winning a fight meant you walked home alone instead of running. By 14, he had broken 2 other boys' noses. By 16, a local boxing coach named Tommy Reyes saw something in the way Dario moved. Aggressive but not reckless, angry but controlled. Tommy pulled him off the street and into a gym. The gym smelled like rubber mats and sweat, and something that felt, for the first time in Dario's life, like belonging. He was good. Then he was very good. Then he was the kind of fighter that other fighters quietly watched when they thought he wasn't looking. At 22, he went 8-2 in regional MMA circuits. At 24, he got his first UFC contract. His debut was at UFC Fight Night 220 in Las Vegas. Undercard, early prelims, 11 in the morning when the arena was still half empty, he submitted his opponent in 47 seconds with a rear naked choke. He stood up, looked at the camera, and said something nobody expected. That's for every kid from Church Avenue who got told they were nothing. The clip went viral for 2 days. People loved it. He was raw and real and hungry, but here is what nobody talks about. What the clip cut off before it ended. After the cameras stopped, after the announcer moved on, Dario walked to the cage door. And the first thing he did was take out his phone and check how many new followers he'd gained. That was the moment the hunger changed into something else. Something harder to name. Something that looks like confidence from the outside but feels, on the inside, like a hole that never fills. Over the next 3 years, the real Dario, the boy from Church Avenue who wanted to make his mother proud, slowly got buried under a performance. Under posts and reels and trash talk videos, and a persona that the internet rewarded every single time he turned the volume up. He wasn't bad. He wasn't evil. He was just lost. And nobody around him was brave enough to say so. His coach, Sergeant Ray Dominguez, a former Marine who ran Iron Pacific MMA in Van Nuys, tried once. He pulled Dario aside after a training session in September 2023, 3 weeks before the Nobu moment, and said quietly, "You're starting to become what you used to hate, kid." Dario laughed it off. He posted a video that same night, shirtless, talking about how he feared nobody in the lightweight division. It got 40,000 views by morning. Sergeant Ray watched it and said nothing more. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes with being surrounded by people who only want to see you perform. Dario Vasquez was drowning in that loneliness. He just didn't know it yet. And in 3 weeks, on a Tuesday afternoon on a beach in Malibu, a 56-year-old man in a gray t-shirt, a man who had nothing to prove to anyone, was about to hold up a mirror. Here is what most people don't know about Jason Statham. He grew up in Shirebrook, Derbyshire, England, not a glamorous address. His father sold fake jewelry on street markets. Jason sold it too, as a teenager, standing in the cold London markets, learning how to read people, how to talk, how to survive on charm and quick thinking when the money wasn't there. He was a competitive diver for 12 years. 12 years. Training at Crystal Palace National Sports Centre in London, representing England's national diving team, competing internationally. That requires a kind of body discipline most people never know. The daily repetition, the physical courage it takes to throw yourself off a 10-meter platform and trust your body to do exactly what your mind has trained it to do. He didn't make the Olympics. He came close. He stopped competing not from failure, but because another door opened, a chance to appear in a Guy Ritchie film called Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels in 1998. He took it. But here is the part that matters to our story. He never stopped training. While most actors hired stunt doubles and personal trainers for pre-film photo shoots, Statham trained year-round with people who did not care about his movie credits. He trained under Koban Lukkomese Tong, one of the most respected Muay Thai coaches in the world. He trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu seriously, earning his purple belt under Renzo Gracie. And in BJJ, a purple belt is not a participation ribbon. It means years of hard rolling, tapping out, getting better, getting hurt, and coming back anyway. He later continued toward brown belt level. He trained free diving off the California coast. He trained with former SAS soldiers. When he appeared in the transporter doing a fight sequence, most of what you saw was him, not a stunt double. Him. None of this was for show. He never made Instagram videos about his training. He never called out other fighters. He never positioned himself as a tough guy who needed the world to believe it. Because real ones don't need to announce it. On that Tuesday afternoon outside Nobu, Statham had just finished a quiet lunch with a producer friend. A business meeting about a possible project. He was tired. He had trained that morning at a gym in West Hollywood, where he worked out 3 to 4 times a week. He had a 7 p.m. call with his partner, Rosie Huntington Whiteley, back home with their kids. He was, in that moment, completely ordinary, which is another way of saying he was completely himself. He heard the laughter first, too loud for a public place, the kind of laugh that needs an audience. Then he heard his name, he turned, and he saw Dario Vasquez, phone up, grinning, surrounded by 2 friends who were laughing along the way. People laugh when they're not sure if something is funny, but don't want to be the one who doesn't. Dario was doing an impression, a mocking, exaggerated walk, narrating it for his camera, saying that Statham looked like a retired plumber trying to be hard, and that if they ever crossed paths in the octagon, it would be a highlight reel for the wrong reasons. The crowd around him expanded. Phones came out. Everyone was waiting to see what the movie star would do. Run, ignore it, call security? Jason Statham stood still for exactly 3 seconds. Then he smiled and walked toward Dario Vasquez. This is the chapter that every article would later get wrong. Every headline would scream about confrontation, about humiliation, about the moment a cocky fighter met his match. The internet would package it as a takedown, a viral moment of instant karma, and tens of millions of people would watch it that way. But that is not what happened. Here is what actually happened, second by second. Seconds 1 through 5. Statham walked over with his hands relaxed at his sides. Not tense, not performing. Dario's friend stepped back slightly, unconsciously, The way people do when they feel a shift in energy they don't fully understand yet. Dario kept the phone up. He was still grinning, but the grin had changed shape. It had gone from a performer's grin to something less sure of itself. Seconds 6 through 12. Statham stopped about 4 feet away. He looked at the phone. He looked at Dario. Then he spoke, in a voice that was completely calm, completely British, and completely quiet. Quiet enough that people filming from further away would later struggle to hear it on their recordings. He said, "How long have you been fighting?" Not angry, not sarcastic, just a question. The kind a coach asks, the kind a father asks. Dario blinked. Seconds 13 through 20. Dario answered. He didn't mean to. The question was so unexpected, so stripped of aggression, that his body responded before his brain caught up. 6 years, professionally. Statham nodded slowly, like he was genuinely processing this. Like this was actual information he found interesting. Then he said, "I started diving when I was 12. Did it for 12 years. You know what 12 years of a sport teaches you?" Dario said nothing. Seconds 21 through 27. "It teaches you that the loudest person on the platform is always the most scared." He said it without cruelty, without triumph. There was no smirk, no crowd play. He wasn't performing for the phones. He was just saying a thing that was true. And because it was said without anger, because there was no chest puffing, no aggression, no invitation to escalate, Dario had no script for it. His whole persona was built to absorb attacks and fire back harder. But you cannot fire back at a question. You cannot fight calm. Seconds 28 through 30. Something moved across Dario Vasquez's face. It was fast. If you watch the video closely, and millions of people eventually would, you can see it in the eyes before anything else. A flicker. Something that looked, for just an instant, like a 28-year-old man from Church Avenue, Fresno, standing in a schoolyard, watching his father's car pull away for the last time. Then it was gone. Dario lowered the phone. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't apologize. He didn't say a single word. He just lowered the phone and stepped back once, and looked somewhere that wasn't anyone's face. Statham held his gaze for one more second. Then he nodded. The nod of a man who has said what needed to be said and has no interest in squeezing it for more, and walked back to his car. He got in, he drove away. The crowd stood in silence for about 4 seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. The videos went up within minutes. By that evening, Statham moment was trending in 8 countries. By morning, every sports outlet and entertainment site had a version of the clip. Dario's name, which had been known only to MMA fans, was suddenly everywhere. But here is the thing that not a single report, not a single video analysis, not a single sports journalist caught in those first rushing days of coverage. Something had landed. Not a punch, not a takedown. A sentence. The loudest person on the platform is always the most scared. And in a hotel room that night, with his phone blowing up and his manager calling, and the world suddenly very interested in Dario Vasquez. The fighter sat on the edge of his bed and did not open Instagram. He sat completely still. And for the first time in 3 years, he thought about his father. The world moved on fast. The world always does. Within 48 hours, the clip had been reacted to, remixed, dunked on, defended, maimed, and forgotten by the mainstream. A new celebrity moment replaced it. The algorithm moved forward, and Dario Vasquez was left behind in the place that comes after 15 minutes of fame. A very specific silence. His manager, Glenn Parra, a fast-talking sports agent from Miami, who had represented mid-level fighters for 15 years, called 3 times the morning after. Each call was about opportunity, podcast invites, a potential guest appearance on a combat sports YouTube channel. A brand that wanted to use the clip ironically, positioning Dario as someone who could take a joke. Dario did not call back. He drove instead to Iron Pacific MMA in Van Nuys. He arrived at 6 a.m. before anyone else. He let himself in with his key, the one Sergeant Ray had given him 2 years ago when he started treating the gym like a second home, and he sat on the mat in the dark. Not stretching, not shadowboxing, just sitting. Ray found him there when he came in at 7:15. He didn't turn on the lights right away. He sat down on the mat too, a few feet away, with 2 cups of coffee from the gas station across the street. He handed one to Dario without a word. They sat like that for 11 minutes. The gym clock ticked on the wall. Somewhere outside, a car horn sounded twice. Then Dario said he didn't even care. Nope, he wasn't scared of me. At all. Nope, that's the thing that got me, Ray. He wasn't scared. I'm a professional fighter and he just walked over like I was nothing. Ray sipped his coffee. Then he said something that Dario would later repeat in an interview that got less views than any video he'd ever made, but that he'd remember longer than all of them. He wasn't treating you like nothing. He was treating you like somebody who still had a chance to be something real. The training session that day was different. Dario worked for 3 hours with no phone present, no camera, no one filming his combinations or his takedowns for content. He sparred with Marcus Webb, a heavyweight prospect who outweighed him by 40 pounds. And he got beaten up a bit, and he came back, and he got beaten up again, and he came back again. Sergeant Ray watched and said nothing, just watched. After the session, Dario sat by himself with an ice pack on his shoulder and finally opened his phone. He had 847 notifications. He put the phone face down, then face up again. Then he opened his contacts and scrolled to a name he hadn't called in 4 years, Mama. He didn't call, not yet. His thumb hovered over the name for a long moment. Then he put the phone down again and stared at the ceiling of the gym until the ice pack went warm. That night he went back to his apartment in North Hollywood, a one-bedroom he'd moved into after his first UFC paycheck, still furnished like a temporary place, even though he'd been there 18 months. Part of him had always felt everything was temporary, that the floor could drop out at any moment, the way it had when he was 9 years old, and his father's closet was suddenly empty. He ate a chicken and rice meal from his nutritionist's containers. Then he sat on the couch and watched old fight tape, not of himself. He watched Georges St-Pierre's documentary. He watched it to the part where GSP talks about fear, about how the greatest fighters are not fearless. They are people who made a decision that their purpose was bigger than their fear. He paused it there. He thought about Church Avenue, about the broken basketball rims, about Tommy Reyes pulling him off the street, about the 47-second submission at UFC Fight Night 220, about the words he'd said to the camera that very first time, the real words, before the performance took over. That's for every kid from Church Avenue who got told they were nothing. He had meant that. He had really truly meant that. Where had that person gone? He got up, walked to his kitchen, picked up his phone, called his mother. She answered on the second ring, the way she always did, as if she had been waiting, as if she had always been waiting, through every missed Sunday, every ignored holiday, every month he was too busy performing to remember where he came from. Mijo, she said, and Dario Vasquez, ranked 14th in the UFC lightweight division, 28 years old, tougher than most people on earth, started crying. Fighting for the right reason, the next 4 months were not cinematic. Nobody was filming them. There was no training montage with a rising soundtrack. There were just days. Hard, ordinary days of a young man trying to figure out who he was when no one was watching. He started calling his mother every Sunday. Rosa Vasquez, who had worked double shifts for 20 years and never once asked her son for anything, would pick up and talk to him about neighborhood things, about the garden she had started in the backyard, about his little sister Camila, who was studying nursing at Fresno State. Small things, real things, the kind of things that have no performance value whatsoever. He drove to Fresno in November. He hadn't been back in almost 2 years. He sat in the kitchen of the house on Church Avenue and ate his mother's rice and beans, and didn't touch his phone the entire evening. His sister Camila showed him photos from her nursing classes. His younger brother Eddie, 17 now, quiet and watchful in the way that youngest children in hard families sometimes are, sat next to him on the couch and pulled up a video, not of Dario's fights, of GSP's fight against Michael Bisping. Eddie wanted to know if Dario thought the wrestling or the striking had been the key. They talked for 2 hours. Dario couldn't remember the last time he had talked to anyone for 2 hours without it being content. He started working differently at Iron Pacific. He asked Ray to put him in sessions with younger fighters, kids coming up, 16 and 17, from neighborhoods like the one he grew up in. He wasn't coaching officially. He was just present, rolling with them, talking between rounds, showing up in the way that nobody had shown up for him at that age after his father left and the house on Church Avenue got quieter than it had any right to be. One of them was a 15-year-old named Leo Garza from Pacoima. Leo reminded Dario so specifically of himself at that age that it was almost painful to watch. The same tight-jawed silence, the same way of moving through a room like the world owed him an apology. The same eyes that were always checking the exits, always waiting for something good to get taken away. Dario started arriving early to work with Leo specifically. Nothing formal, just showing up. One afternoon, Leo asked him about the Jason Statham video. He'd seen it, of course, everyone had. Dario was quiet for a moment, then he said, "You know what he actually said to me?" He asked how long I'd been fighting. Like he wanted to know. Like I was worth knowing about. And I had been standing there making fun of him, trying to prove I was something, while he just stood there already being it. Leo thought about this for a while. "So he was nicer to you than you were to him?" "Yeah," Dario said. "He was." They sat with that for a moment. The gym noise filled the space around them. The rhythm of gloves on bags, the squeak of shoes on mat, the low hum of the fans in the corner. Ordinary sounds, good sounds. "Why do you think he bothered?" Leo asked. Dario had thought about this more than he'd admitted to anyone. "I think," he said slowly, "because he remembered what it felt like to be the guy who needed to be the loudest. And he didn't hate that guy. He just felt sorry for him." Leo nodded, said nothing, but something shifted in his face, just slightly, just enough, the way a door shifts when the wind changes outside. In January 2024, Dario's ranking fight was confirmed. He was scheduled to face Brett "Blizzard" Holman, ranked 8th in the lightweight division at UFC Fight Night 237 at the Apex facility in Las Vegas. A test card. A fighter's fight. The kind of card that doesn't fill arenas but builds careers, quietly, in front of the people who actually know what they're watching. Glenn Parra tried to build a media campaign around it. Trash talk content. Challenge videos. The things that had worked before, the things the algorithm rewarded, the things that turned a fighter into a character and a character into a following. Dario said no. Glenn said that was commercial suicide, that personality built platforms. That the Statham clip had handed Dario an audience and he was throwing it away with both hands. Dario told him calmly that he was going to fight Brett Holman as well as he possibly could, and the fight would speak for itself. Glenn shook his head and started making calls to other clients. The night before the fight, Dario sat in his hotel room in Las Vegas and did not post anything. No hype video, no phone camera speech to the followers, no countdown graphic with his walkout song underneath it. He called his mother, he called Camila, he called Sergeant Ray, who told him to get some sleep and to remember that the body knows what to do if the mind gets out of the way. He did not call his father. He had not spoken to Miguel Vasquez in 19 years and had no plans to. Some wounds close with time and work and the right kind of attention. Some remain open. But you learn, if you are lucky and stubborn and surrounded by the right people, to fight with them anyway, to stop pretending they aren't there and start carrying them differently. He turned off the light at 10 p.m. He thought about Leo Garza, about Church Avenue, about a boy who had needed to be the loudest in every room because quiet meant invisible, and invisible meant gone. And gone meant what happened when you were 9 years old and the closet was empty on a Wednesday morning. He breathed slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The way Ray had taught him years ago, back when breathing was the first thing that needed fixing. He was ready, not performed ready, real ready. The moment truth arrives, UFC Fight Night 237. January 20th, 2024, Las Vegas. The Apex facility holds 1,000 people on a good night. It is not the spectacle arena. It is not the place with the pyrotechnics and the roaring crowd and the lights that make everything feel bigger than it is. It is the place where careers are made or quietly ended. The lighting is sharp. The canvas is white. There is nowhere to hide. Brett Holman walked out first, ranked 8th, 26 years old, from Portland, Oregon. A dangerous wrestler with knockout power in both hands and a 14-3 record built with ruthless, unglamorous consistency. He did not trash talk. He did not need to. His record did it for him. He walked to the cage the way serious men walk into serious rooms, without theater, without announcement, like someone who has already decided how this ends. The crowd gave him a solid reception. Then Dario Vasquez's music hit. He had changed his walkout song. For 2 years he had walked out to a loud, aggressive trap anthem, maximum energy, maximum performance, the kind of music that tells a crowd exactly how they are supposed to feel before a single punch has been thrown. Tonight was different. Tonight the speakers filled the apex with something that made the commentary team go quiet and the camera operators glance at each other. Chavela Vargas, La Llorona, a raw, aching Mexican folk song about grief and love and the things that outlast us. A song Rosa Vasquez had played on Sunday mornings in the kitchen on Church Avenue while she made breakfast before a double shift. A song that had no business being in a UFC arena and knew it and didn't care. It was so unexpected, so out of place, that for a moment the whole room just listened. Then one of the commentators said quietly, "I don't know what that means, but something's different with this kid tonight." Dario did not point at the crowd. He did not flex. He did not stop to film himself on the walkway. He walked to the cage with his head down and his hands loose and his jaw relaxed. And when he stepped through the door and heard it close behind him, he looked across at Brett Holman and felt something he had not felt in a long time inside a cage. Calm. Not performed calm. Not the calm of a man telling himself to be calm. Real calm. The kind that comes when you have nothing left to prove to anyone except yourself. And you have gotten honest enough with yourself that even that pressure is something you can carry without flinching. The fight went 3 rounds. It was not a highlight reel. It was not the kind of fight that gets clipped and shared and set to music. It was a war, the grinding, technical, lung-burning kind that real fans remember long after the flashy knockouts have faded. The kind of fight that asks something genuine of both men and gets a genuine answer back. Holman took him down 3 times in the first round. Each time Dario defended, worked back to his feet, absorbed the punishment, and gave it back with interest. His face was a problem he was solving, not a story he was telling. Ray's voice was in his head, not as instruction, just as presence. The body knows what to do if the mind gets out of the way. In the second round, Dario found his range. 2 minutes in, he landed a combination. Jab, right hand, left hook. That wobbled Holman against the cage for the first time in Holman's professional career. The crowd came alive in the way crowds come alive when something real happens, when the moment breaks through the noise and lands. Holman survived, came back. They traded in the pocket for the final minute of the round in a way that made the commentators shout over each other and forget their notes entirely. Third round, both men tired, both men bleeding. Dario from a cut above his left eye, Holman's elbow in the first round, a clean, accidental shot that had opened up and bled steadily since. Holman from a split lip that had turned his mouthguard red and kept making him spit. Between exchanges, the crowd was on its feet. With 90 seconds left, Dario shot for a takedown. Holman stuffed it. Good base, good timing, the product of 1,000 hours on the mat. But Dario didn't panic. He transitioned without hesitation to a body lock, walked him to the cage, felt for the angle the way you feel for a door handle in a dark room. Not frantically, just patiently, just with the knowledge that it is there. He found it. With 53 seconds left in the fight, he secured the rear naked choke. Holman fought it. 10 seconds. 11. His face going dark, his hands working at Dario's forearm with the focused desperation of a man who knows exactly what is happening and cannot stop it. Then he tapped. Dario let go immediately, cleanly, without drama, the way you release something you were never trying to destroy. He stood up, looked at the ceiling of the Apex facility, chest heaving, blood running freely from the cut above his eye, tracking down his cheek and dripping from his jaw onto the white canvas below. He did not scream. He did not point at the camera. He did not say a word. He just stood in the middle of the cage with his hands at his sides, and his eyes were full, visibly, unambiguously full, in the way that is not performance, in the way that cannot be faked, in the way that only comes when something real has just happened, to a person who was finally present enough to feel it. The announcer crossed the cage, microphone up. Dario, first words? He looked down at the canvas, at the blood there, at the shape of the fight that had just happened, already becoming the past. He looked up, and he said 5 words that nobody in that arena, nobody watching at home, nobody who had clicked on the fight because of a beef with a movie star, was expecting to hear. The revelation. The arena went quiet enough to hear the ventilation system. Not the hush of a crowd waiting for something loud, the deeper quiet. The kind that falls when people sense, without being able to explain it, that they are about to hear something true. Dario Vasquez looked into the camera, not as a performer, not as a brand, not as a ranked fighter in the UFC lightweight division with 180 viewed Instagram followers and a protein shake sponsorship, and a highlight reel that had been viewed 30 million times in the past 72 hours. He looked into the camera as a 28-year-old man from a zip code where the basketball rims were broken, whose father left on a Wednesday with no goodbye note, whose mother worked double shifts for 20 years and never once asked for anything back, who had confused being loud with being strong for so long that he had nearly lost the real thing living underneath all that noise. He said, "That one was for Leo." 5 words, no chest pound, no finger point, no brand mention, no call-out, no setup for the next fight. Just a name. A 15-year-old name from Pacoima that meant nothing to the commentators, nothing to the crowd, nothing to the tens of thousands watching the live stream from their couches and their phones and their corner bars. Everything to one person. Leo Garza had watched the fight on his phone, in his bedroom, with his little brother asleep on the other side of the mattress they shared. He had the volume low. He had been so still during the 3rd round that he hadn't realized he was holding his breath until Holman tapped and the air came rushing out of him all at once. When the choke landed, he stood up in the dark and pumped his fist in the air and had to press his own hand over his mouth to keep from waking his brother. He watched Dario stand in the cage, bleeding, not performing. He watched him say the 5 words. And Leo Garza, 15 years old, from Pacoima, who had come to Iron Pacific MMA because his school counselor had made it a condition of avoiding suspension, who had sat in the corner of the gym for the first 2 weeks with his arms folded and his face closed off like a door that expected to be slammed, sat back down on the edge of the mattress and stared at his phone screen for a long time after the broadcast moved on. He would tell Dario about this moment weeks later. He would tell him what it felt like to watch someone he knew. Not a distant icon, not a highlight reel, but an actual person who had shown up early on actual mornings and sat with him between actual rounds, stand in the middle of something real and not flinch from it. He would tell him something else too. Something Dario would never post, never share, would carry privately, like a photograph kept in a wallet for the rest of his career as a fighter. When you didn't yell or flex or say nothing big, when you just stood there looking like it was real, that was the first time I thought maybe I could do this too. Not the fighting, just the standing there and having it be real. That is the moment this story was always about. Not the clip outside Nobu, not the trending hashtag, not the ranked fighter and the movie star, and the 30 seconds that the internet packaged as instant karma and moved on from by Thursday. It was about a boy watching another boy stop performing and start being real, and deciding, in a dark room in Pacoima, with his brother asleep beside him, that maybe real was something he could try too. One question outside a restaurant. One sentence said without cruelty to a young man who had run out of script. One fight won without theater, without announcement, without anything except the work and the truth of it. One name said into a microphone in a quiet arena, and a 15-year-old boy sitting up straighter in the dark. That is how it travels. Not through algorithms. Not through follower counts or brand deals or viral moments packaged and reshared until they mean nothing. It travels the way it has always traveled, person to person, quietly, in the spaces between the noise. Jason Statham asked one question outside a restaurant and walked away. He never spoke publicly about the incident. He didn't need to. The loudest person on the platform is always the most scared. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, if the right words find the right person at exactly the right moment, the quietest thing changes everything. Aftermath. The things that happened after are not dramatic. That is the point. Dario Vasquez moved to a new management team in February 2024. Smaller agency, less flash, people who talked about fights more than they talked about content calendars. He took fewer media appearances. He turned down the podcast invites and the YouTube collaborations and the ironic brand deal that wanted to put his face on a product by making a joke of the worst version of himself. His follower count dropped by 30,000 in 1 month because he stopped posting every day. He did not replace that number for a long time. He found slowly and then all at once that he didn't mind. He went back to Fresno in March. Not for content, not for a homecoming video with a ring light and a caption about staying humble. He went back because Tommy Reyes, the boxing coach who had pulled a 16-year-old off the street on Blackstone Avenue and handed him something to belong to, was 61 years old now and still running the same gym with the same worn-down equipment and the same kids who needed somewhere to be after school because home was complicated and the street was worse. Dario spent a weekend there. He worked with the kids for free. He held pads. He showed combinations. He sat on the bench between rounds and talked to boys who reminded him of himself in the particular way that hurts. The tight silence, the borrowed toughness, the eyes that have already learned not to expect too much from adults who show up. He did not post about it. Not one photo, not one story, not one caption. Tommy Reyes watched him from across the gym on the last afternoon and said nothing. But when Dario was leaving, Tommy put a hand on his shoulder and held it there for a moment, the way men do when words are not the right tool. Dario drove back to Los Angeles with the windows down. He remained ranked in the lightweight division. He had one more fight booked. He was focused, training hard. Still loud in the gym. He would always be loud in the gym. That was simply the architecture of who he was. Built in schoolyards and parking lots, and a house on Church Avenue where being quiet had once meant being invisible. But the loudness had changed. Quality. It was not performing anymore. It was just energy. His energy. The real kind that had always been there under the performance, waiting to be used for something that mattered. Leo Garza kept training. He stopped sitting in the corner with his arms folded. He started arriving early. He started asking questions between rounds. Good questions. Fighters' questions. The kind that come from someone who has begun to see themselves inside the sport instead of outside it looking in. By June 2024, he had won his first amateur bout. A unanimous decision over 3 rounds against a kid from Burbank who was bigger and had more experience and lost. Anyway, because Leo Garza had decided, somewhere in the dark of his bedroom watching a man bleed quietly in a Las Vegas cage, that real was something worth trying. Dario was cage-aside for the fight. He did not film it. He just watched. When the decision was announced and Leo looked over, Dario nodded once. The same nod, it occurred to him, that a man in a gray t-shirt had given him outside a restaurant in Malibu. The nod of someone who has seen something true and has no need to make it bigger than it already is. Rosa Vasquez got a call from her son every Sunday without fail. She told him about the garden, about Camila's nursing classes, about the neighbor's dog that kept getting into the yard, and the way Eddie had started talking about maybe looking at community college in the fall. Small things. The kind of things that are not small at all when you understand what it means that they are being said. She never mentioned the Statham video. She never mentioned the fight, the rankings, the follower count, or any of it. She just talked to her son, and her son listened. Sergeant Ray Dominguez told the story of the 6 a.m. mat conversation sometimes, when the moment felt right. When he had a young fighter sitting across from him who was starting to confuse the performance with the person, who was starting to believe that the loudest version of themselves was the strongest version of themselves. He never named Dario in those tellings. He didn't need to. The fighters always knew, and somewhere in Malibu or West Hollywood or wherever the work took him that week, Jason Statham trained. He kept quiet about it. He let the work speak, the way it always had, the way it always does for people who understood long ago that the point was never to be believed. The point was to be ready. The point was to show up, day after day, in gyms that didn't care about your credits. with coaches who didn't care about your following, and do the work until the work became the truth of you. He never spoke publicly about the incident outside Nobu. He never would. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for a moment that will finally make them feel real. Dario Vasquez found his. Not outside a restaurant, not in a trending hashtag, not in 30 seconds that the internet packaged and consumed and forgot. In a cage in Las Vegas, with blood on his face and his eyes full and 5 quiet words that meant everything to exactly the right person. That is enough. That has always been enough. And that was the end of this story. A cocky fighter, a quiet movie star, 30 seconds outside a restaurant, and a chain of quiet moments that changed more lives than any of them planned. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Drop your city, your country, your corner of the world in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of someone you know or someone you used to be, hit that like button. It takes 1 second, and it means everything to a channel like this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. We tell stories exactly like this one. Stories about real moments, real change, and the quiet words that land harder than any punch. Hit subscribe so you never miss one. Finally, share this video. Send it to a friend. Send it to a family member. Send it to someone who needs to be reminded that it is never too late to stop performing and start being real. Kindness travels further than we think. Awareness starts with one person deciding to pass something on. That person can be you. We will see you in the next story.